I'm going to share with you in this video is not only going to boost your chances of succeeding in many domains, it's also going to considerably change your life. Stay tuned. Hello, if you're watching me for the first time, my name is Arnaud from Wine Investor. Here I talk about investments and entrepreneurship so as to motivate you to get out of your comfort zone and guarantee yourself financial independence and thereby help the community to considerably impact on the diaspora and on the African continent. If you're interested by these topics, I kindly invite you to like the video and most importantly share, massively share, because that's how we're going to achieve the great objectives of our ambitions. I also invite you to subscribe and most importantly, activate the notification clock so as to always be premier on all our videos. By the time you're watching this video, you definitely have a goal, you have an objective which is so dear to you and that you want to achieve in life, but you still don't know how to start. You might have started even, and after a lot of unsuccessful trials, you have decided to give up. You might be a product seller, you have a product you want to sell, but after a lot of prospections, you weren't able to sell just one product and you've just decided to give up. You're looking for a job mercilessly, hopelessly. You've been even invited to for job interviews, but after a lot of job interviews, you came out without any, concluding reply. You are in a relationship and you have difficulties in making your partner listen to you. After a lot of trials, to express your fear, your ambitions, your goals, your needs, you're still not listened to. You might be in a business partnership or even in a company and you have difficulties in making your interlocutors consider your opinion. Breathe out. Because in this video, I'll be sharing with you a big strategy, very important strategy, which after having implemented in my life has opened me doors to millions I'd never dreamt of. The power of persuasion. Yes, the power of persuasion, because figure it out. When I was a student, I fight for many side jobs so as to, pay my bills, pay my rent, pay my, insurance at the end of each month. With no reply. I used to, pack some good bottle of wines in my bag over the weekend and knock at people's door and propose my wine. Walk from Afro shop to Afro shop and propose my wine without any sale. Why then? Why? Simply because I didn't know how to convince people. Simply because I didn't know the strategy necessary to convince people. I couldn't convince a potential employer, even though I had the capacities to do the job, to do the task. My God, what kind of capacity do you need, to guarantee yourself a job which consists simply of carrying a plate from a restaurant kitchen to the customer's table, if it's not the power of persuasion? What kind of job or what kind of capabilities do you need to sell a bottle of wine to someone who has opened his door to you, let you in, let you sit comfortably on his couch and propose a wine to him and still not be able to sell, if it's not the power of persuasion? Yes, a lot of people ignore the power of persuasion. People think the capacity, the capabilities to persuade people is only left, to people who have great political ambitions or people who have products to sell. No, what we forget or what we still don't see or consider is that every day we're exposed to situations in which the power of persuasion is very important. For example, in a company, you might have a team of deciders. Well, the efficiency at which the people are going to take a decision in that team depends on the power of persuasion of one or some of the participants. In a relationship, for example, where you might have different divergent opinions on very sensible topics, you will definitely need, the power of persuasion of one partner or both partners, unless you want disaster to come in. So how do you persuade your opponent? How do you persuade your interlocutor? The strategy I'm proposing to you here lays on 3 points: attention, consideration, action. Attention, consideration, action. And each time you are, exchanging with your interlocutor, you are, following this strategy, you're following these points and follow exactly this cycle: attention, consideration, action. What people don't know, or what great persuaders do, what great, salespeople do, what great leaders do, or what they understand, is that for someone to listen to you, or for someone to convince somebody, your message has to reach the person. A lot of people just talk. A lot of people, they meet messages. A lot of people send out messages without really, without really considering the fact that the message has to reach, the person to which the message is sent to. And what you need to know is that each and every one of us has naturally, a protection. When we walk around the road, we have this protection around us. We don't want, we know that a lot of bad things can happen. Someone can just steal your phone. Someone can just, steal your purse and run away with your money, your credit cards. When someone we don't know, really comes to us on the street and, is trying to ask a question, we're just like, oh, what's happening here? Is he trying, to distract me so that his friend can take away my purse or whatever? What's happening? We just have this natural protection. When you're trying to buy something on an online shop, when it comes to giving, your credit card, number or code or whatever, you're asking yourself, am I really doing the right decision here? Am I really doing something? Or am I really exposing myself to some kind of online financial fraud? You're always asking yourself this question because you have a natural protection around you. And what great persuaders do is that to convince your interlocutor, they have to make sure that the message reaches the interlocutor. And this message cannot reach the interlocutor if it can't cross this barrier of protection. So what they do is they concentrate mainly on letting their interlocutor lower this protection barrier, because only you can lower your barrier. Okay? Only you can decide to lower this barrier. So this whole strategy is based on this fact. This whole strategy is based on letting you lower your barrier so that I can send in my message, so that my message can come through. Very important. Well, the strategy is based on 3 points, but of course, convincing someone lies on many other points, common points, which we know. For example, you need to have a good presentation. The first point, actually, even before attention, consideration, and action, is the presentation. How you present yourself. When you're trying to sell a product to someone, you have to you have to show up well presented. The person needs to know that you're selling a product which is not stolen from somewhere. When you're trying to get a job somewhere, you need to come well presented. And I have here a presentation of the barrier, of this, protection barrier. And on a scale from 0 to 100, when you don't know someone, your barrier is really at 100%. It's at the maximum level. Okay? So to persuade someone, you really have to work on how to get this barrier up to about 25%. Okay? At this level, you can get, if you apply the strategies well, you can get anything you want from your interlocutor, because you don't need to get him at the 0 level, because having a barrier at 0 simply means that the person really trusts you. The person, your interlocutor, is not afraid of anything. But trust shouldn't exclude distrust. Okay, even in a relationship, you change everything. You can show your bank account. You can, you talk about finances, but there's still something. There's still something that someone is hiding somewhere. Not because you don't trust your partner, because you don't know what happened. It's this natural part of the human being where there's always one thing which someone doesn't want to share completely. So don't forget, the aim, of a persuader is not to make sure that the barrier of his interlocutor is at 0 base level. At 25. You can have anything you want. So your strategy is to get this barrier from 100 to 25%. And analysis have shown that the presentation alone, the way you present yourself, reduces the barrier to about 80%. Because if you're walking on the road and someone stops you to ask you a question, there's a difference if someone stops you wearing, for example, a coat with a tie, nice shoes, nice bag, stops to ask you a question. And someone who, has torn clothes everywhere and he stops to ask you a question. So the presentation is very important. But the presentation is going to reduce, and studies have shown that, will reduce the barrier by maximum 20%. So you can go down to at maximum 80%. Okay? Well, it might sound complex. Of course, yes, the topic is very, very complex, and that is why I go in detail into this topic in some courses that are going to be published later on my website, of course, if you're interested, you can, book yourself a course. But here I'm going to describe this with some example. You might have realized that this is a strategy that you need in almost every aspect of your life. If you are in a relationship and you want to, get yourself well listened to, you are in a company, you want to be more considered, if you want to sell a product, if you want to sell yourself, for example, to a potential employer, okay, to a potential employer so that he can, he can give you a job. There are many examples. So I'm going to focus here, for example, on someone who was, filed for a job. He's been invited, for a job interview. Okay, he has presented himself because he has been invited because he was able to reduce, the barrier of the employer from 100 to 80. Why? Because he sent a CV, and the CV has, his, CV is live description. He has a nice picture. Everybody today has, has a CV. Nice words. You just go to a website platform, type in your data, and you get, a well dressed up CV with a nice professional photo. Everyone can do that. So that's why you can never convince, a potential employer to reduce his barrier at lower than 80%. Because there are a lot of people who, send out, what have I not seen? What have I not seen in my experience these last years? Some people are going to file, a perfect CV, but when they come for an interview, you ask them some little basic questions about what they've written in the CV, they're not able to answer. There are some people who go to your friends and ask them, I have this job, I want to get this job, please write a CV for me, write a motivation letter for me. Okay, and they just go and send it, file it. Okay, so the employers know that no matter how good your CV is, they will never reduce, their barrier to a level which is lower than 80%. That's a fact. It's been proven. So a lot of people think that when they get invited for a job interview, they have a job at 50. They have 50% of chances of getting the job. No, you have just 20% chances of getting the job. You still have a lot of work to do, because going down from 80 to 25 means you still have to do a great job to lower, this barrier by 55% again. Okay, so what I'm going to show you is what you have to do in order to lower the job. So to lower the barrier. So attention is very important. Attention is very important because a lot of people make this mistake. To send a message to someone, you have to make sure that he, has your attention, that you have his attention, that he's listening to you. A lot of people have problems in relationship, for example, because they're going to be talking to your partners. You come to your partner, you just start talking. You see him, on his phone, maybe answering, a message or doing something on his phone, and you're just talking. And after you're just, you're just fed up with the fact that you're talking, and he's not listening to you. He's on his phone. For goodness sake, what did you do to get his attention? Nothing. And that's what a lot of people take from their private life and put in the professional life, and still wonder why they can't go further. Because you don't get the attention of your interlocutor. First point. Okay? You have to get the attention of your interlocutor. And getting the attention of your interlocutor properly will, let your interlocutor lower his barrier by maximum 15%. It's been proven. 15%. So you can go down to 65%. Okay? Consideration is very important. Okay? Because this is where you're going to explain yourself. For someone, to listen to you, he has to see some consideration in what you're saying. And a lot of people fail here because they're just talking, they're just saying what they think. You just want to impose their mindsets, impose their ideas without really, thinking about the impact this idea can have on the interlocutor. And this is where you're going to develop a lot of things. We're going to come to that later. And later come the action. The consideration is very important because it's going to reduce, he has the capability of reducing the barrier by 35%. That's where the greatest job has to be done. This is where the greatest job has to be done. You have to do a very good job here to captivate the person, but this is where everything happens. And most importantly, at the end, the last point, the last step is, to invite, your interlocutor to take an action. And inviting your interlocutor to take an action will, help him reduce, the barrier by 5%. Okay? Very important. I'm going to explain that. Let me take an example for someone who has, filed for a job. Okay, let's say in a car manufacturing company. Let's take, for example, in Germany. It could be Mercedes or, Volkswagen. Someone, the company is looking for an engineer who's going to work on a project which consists in developing and integrating the first, electric vehicle of the brand to the market. Okay? So, of course, we're talking about someone with electrical engineering background and what, and so on and so on, and so on and so forth. So, what most people do is when they come to the job interview, they introduce, they're taken to the interview hall or interview room, and they're faced with all the people who are deciders in the company, or who are going to decide whether he gets a job or not. And mostly they're going to introduce themselves, but just very briefly. They will just say, okay, my name is this, I'm in charge of this in the company, I've been in this company for 2 years, full stop. The next person is going to introduce himself just like that, and they're going to invite you, to talk about yourself. Okay? They're going to ask you to introduce yourself. And what most people do, they start directly talking about themselves. They don't captivate, the attention of the people. They don't make sure that the people are listening to them. They, assume that since they have been given the opportunity to talk, everybody's listening. You don't know, what someone's mind is made of, what's going through someone's mind, even though he's sitting in a meeting. But you need to consider, you need to get his attention to follow what you're about to say. Okay? So what most people do is they say, okay, you have the right to speak, sir. And they just start saying, yeah, my name is Mr. This, 35 years old. Yeah, I've been living in Germany for, 15 years. I was born in Africa. I went to school in Africa, had my advanced level in Africa. Some even go and say, I wanted to study medicine, but my parents said I should come to Germany, to study electrical engineering. I studied electrical engineering for 6 years. During my studies, I did some small jobs aside, they start listing everything what I have in the CV. After that, I got my, my degree. I started working. I have 7 years of experience. 2 years I worked as this. I did this. After the 2 years, I worked for 5 years. I did this. Full stop. And then they cross their hands and they're looking at the people. That's what 99% of the candidates in a job interview do, and that's why 99.99% of them don't get the job. And I will tell you what 1%, the 1% or the 0.01% of the candidates do to get the job. We assume that all of them have the same experience, okay? But the way you sell yourself, sometimes even some people even get the job even though they are not experienced as other candidates, okay? But how you convince, how you talk, how you persuade your interlocutor is very important. I'll give you an example. There's a difference between someone who just reacts as I have just said and someone who says this. Germany faces their energy transition and has taken the great challenge to reduce pollution by gradually integrating renewable energy production units while reducing the amount of power generation units based on fossil energy sources. This will definitely demand the development and the integration of electric vehicles over time on the market. And in a country like Germany, which produces up to date not more than 320,000 electric vehicles a year, and in a country in which more than 3 million cars, newly manufactured cars, are newly registered in the country, this means the sector of electric vehicles has a growth potential of not less than 9% per year in order to achieve the energy or climate challenges of 2050 or the challenge goals of 2050. I will be honored and pleased to contribute to the achievement of this challenge and to be part of this growth. Full stop. Because what you are doing here, you are giving facts, because here to gain their attention you have to bring out logical arguments. Logical arguments are based on facts. It's either 1 or 0. Logical arguments are based on facts, so you're bringing out figures. Once you've said this, you have just captured the attention of the people listening to you. Why? Because 99% of the people don't do that. And most importantly, because you are showing them that you're taking time to understand what is waiting for you in the company. You've taken time to understand what the challenges the company is going to be facing, the goal the company wants to achieve on a short and long-term base. And you're giving it out with figures. Figures, very important. Figures. You've gained the attention. So at this point, everyone wants to listen to you. And that's where you now start introducing. My name is this year old. I am an electrical engineer. I have 7 years of experience. 2 years as this, 2 years, for example, as a software developer to monitor the life cycle or to monitor, the health index of, of cells in the battery electric vehicle, battery pack. And after that, I was, responsible, for assembly line of, electric vehicle battery packs for 5 years. After, thoroughly reading the description of the job we're talking about here today, I realized that you're looking for someone with this, and this. I firmly believe that I am the perfect candidate for you, and I'm here today to convince you. Full stop. That's what you do. Attention. At this point, everyone is listening to you. Everyone wants to hear what you have to say. Because this is where you're going to do the magic. This is where you're going to get your lungs out. This is where you're going to do everything. But you need to make sure that everyone is concentrated here. You have a lot of, HR, executives. They sit down, in the job interview, and after some point in time, you just see them doing as if they're writing. They're just bored. And when they are bored, they can't really consider what you're saying. Some HR executives, when they come out of an interview, you ask them what the candidate said. They don't just know. They don't even remind that they can't recall how the candidate introduced himself, simply because the candidate didn't focus on how to get their attention. Very, very important. Logical arguments. The second part, which is the most important part, because by doing this, you've captivated attention and you've reduced, the barrier by 15%, so you're not by 65. The next job is to reduce it by 30%, by 35%, so you can reach the 30% barrier level. Okay? So at the consideration, what you're going to be working on, there are 2 points. There are a lot of points, but I'll just give you 2 points here. You're going to be working on emotional appeals and social proof. Okay? Emotional appeal and social proof. Okay. There is something you need to know. For someone to buy your product, for someone to give you a job with a certain level of responsibility, this person has to consider you. But as a client, someone who is a client or someone who is a potential employer, he's the king. We always say, the client is a king, so he has to be considered first. For him to consider you, you have to consider him first. Because when you are asking someone to leave his fear, to leave his way of seeing things, to abandon it and concentrate, on your way of seeing things, you have to consider him first. Only then can he consider you. That's the key. So you're going to be working here, most importantly, on emotional appeals. And in 99.9% of the cases, you'll be working here on fear. Because why is someone not going to buy your product? Simply because he's afraid of making a wrong deal. Simply because he's afraid of, losing money. You're buying, giving out money for something which has no value. Why is someone afraid? Why would someone not give you a job when you've sent the CV, when he's invited you to come for a job interview? That means you've already, you've already made him reduce, his protection level, his barrier level by 20%. But you shouldn't get a job simply because he is afraid that if he gives you the job, you won't be able to handle it. Simply because he might be afraid that if you come to the company, after 1 year, you can decide to leave the company, you can resign and leave the company with the company secret that you're going to sell in another company. So there are a lot of things. And all of these things are just centered about fear. So this is where you're going to be working on the emotional appeals. In other domains, for example, in the relationship, it could be fear, but it could also be the needs, of your partner, for example. Okay? The social proof is very important, because social proof relies on the fact that if you are someone who's good at something, the first people to testify about it are the people in your surroundings. Okay? So if you are a good father, the first people to testify that are your children, or your wife, not, your neighbor. Very, very important. And that's just why you will see that if you go, for example, on Amazon, you want to buy a product. And there are so many, from different vendors. You see the same product from different vendors, maybe different, brands and all that. But you're like kind of, wondering, should I buy this one or this other one? And then when you scroll down and you see the recommendations, you see the ratings that have been done by other purchasers, and you see that 99% of people who bought this product gave a good recommendation, the level goes down. Simply because you have a proof. There's a social proof. When people in the surrounding, people who are close to that product, that means the people who have already bought the product give a good recommendation. Social proof is important. So after having caught the attention of the people here, because as you might have realized, I have not detailed, for example, what I did in the 2 years of engineering or PowerShell, whatever, software developer or assembly line, leader or whatever. I've just given it briefly because it's important also for me to let the potential buyer, the potential employer, to know that I know what is on my CV. Because like I said, there are a lot of people, they just write a lot of things on the CV, and when they come to the interview, they don't know what is on the CV. So the first important thing is to go here briefly, but give 1 or 2 points which you have on your CV to make them know that you know what you're talking about. But this is where you're going to develop them. So after having done this, I will simply continue because I'm still, in that phase where they've asked me to introduce myself. So when I say I believe that I'm the perfect candidate for this job and I'm here to convince you, full stop, I go to the next step. I believe also that the job we're talking about today is very important for you because it has a lot of responsibility. And to hand over that responsibility to someone, you need to trust the person. And I believe that you can trust me because I have the experience. Firstly, because you're not trying to eradicate the fear that someone or that you might be a candidate who doesn't have the experience. Okay? So you will now develop at this point what you've done in the other companies, in your experience so far, which is related to the job which you're going to be doing. And for example, I would say I delivered, in the first job for 2 years, I developed a software which monitored the temperature of the battery cells and this. And most importantly, you have to come to a conclusion, something that's gonna give a punch. So you will say, this software helped us reduce the amount of batteries that exploded in test vehicles by 20%. Very important. But you just give someone, a result which is going to give a punch, but you need a social proof. Okay? There are a lot of things you might have done in your company, but it's not written somewhere. You have no attestation from your, let's say, former employer or from the employer where you're still working, and you have not yet resigned, so you can't have an attestation. But there are a lot of things that might have happened in their company. So even if you have no attestation for that, just state it. Okay, at this point in time, just bring it out. So you will say, after having reduced, the amount of, batteries that exploded in test vehicles by 20%, this, motivated my boss to give me much more responsibility. So he gave me the opportunity to do this, and he was very happy. Just give the points. Second point, if you have something you did, for example, in a company which you had already left and you have an attestation, you will say, I did this, I developed this, and this, always bring a peculiar result. Figures. So we could reduce this by 10%, we could increase the amount of sales by 20, 15%. You bring out your attestation and put it on the table. Social proof. Because people need to see proofs. You bring it out and put it on the table. If you're just coming up fresh from the university and you're trying to explain why you think that you can solve simulation problems, you can do this with simulations here and there, just bring out your transcript and show exactly where are the subjects, which you covered at the university where you had to do with simulation tools, and show the mark you had there. Very, very, very important. Social proof. Okay? And then once you have done that, you now move to the next point, action, because this is very important. Okay? Before going here, there's a second part here. Okay? So now that you've proven why, okay, you've reduced the fear that you might not have a lot of experience. There's still another fear. The other fear is that you can come to the company and leave after 1 year and leave with the company secret. There are a lot of people who do that. They just get a job, just want to get a job because their goal is to come to the company, spend even 6-7 months, get the company secret and get out of it. So you have to eradicate this fear. You have to let the company know that you understand his fears, and this is why he shouldn't be afraid of you. That's how you show consideration. So at this second point I will be saying that considering the fact that this job is a job with a lot of responsibility, and you need someone you can count on. You need someone to whom you'll be giving, tasks, and you can sleep peacefully at night. I believe that you can count on me because if you look at my CV, I had 2 years where I started, as a new professional, gained some little experience, and had the opportunity to take on the responsibility for 5 years in a company where I did this, and now I'm ready to take on the next challenge. But believe me, every time I will do a change in my career, it's a change that will help me take greater and greater responsibilities. Full stop. At this point in time, you are telling your potential employee or employer that he can count on you, because they know that this is someone who is coming for a challenge. He wants a responsibility, and if we give him, the atmosphere where he has this responsibility, we can count on him, because we saw him taking responsibilities in another company, and he stayed there for 5 years, even though the responsibility was a great one. We can count on him. That's how you can reduce that. Very, very important. Then after that, you now go to the last point, action. A lot of people do, just like the friend or the other candidate I was talking about. He talk about himself, talk about his whole life, and then sat down. Very bad point. Because like I said, when you're reducing, you're talking, you're gaining attention, you're gaining consideration from your interlocutor, you are reducing the barrier. But by inviting your interlocutor to take action, you are inviting him, you are showing him consideration, because you want him to take part in your proposition. You're not imposing him something. You're not telling him, this is what I want, this is what I'm telling you, you either take it or not. Okay? So you want him, to express certain fears that you might have not eradicated in your consideration part here. Very, very important. Okay? Because you cannot eradicate all 100% of the fear. But at least if you had done 80% here, you can give him the opportunity to, to express, the other 20% which you have not touched at this point. Okay? So, very, very important. So you show consideration here, okay? And you are giving the opportunity to the interlocutor to react in such a way that you continue with this cycle. Because your conversation as a great persuader has to be, lying on a continuous, cycle of attention, gaining attention, captivating, considering, and, inviting, your interlocutor to take action. Okay? Because if you're talking and you just make a pause, you're going to create, some kind of tension. Because you've been talking, people have been listening to you, and then pause. So they don't know what they have to do. Do they have to ask you another question? Do they have to go to the next question? Or do they have to, to come back to this point and, question certain things you've said here? They are listening. But as a product seller, if you're trying to sell any product, if you're trying to persuade someone, any second of tension causes the barrier to rise up again. A lot of people are going to go to a job interview and they're going to be talking, and they will come out and say, yeah, I think I just hate it. I must have the job. I think I've gotten the job. But what they have done is they came the barrier was at 80, they would talk, maybe try and get some attention, get down to 65, talk about some, get some little consideration, go a little bit down, and then pause. And at this time, the barrier rises back again. So some people, they will just, throughout 30, 45 minutes conversation, they'll just be fluctuating between 80, 65, going back to 80, 65, 80, 65. And when they come out, they think they have done a great job. No room for suspense, no room for tension. So you get attention, give consideration, ask him, invite him to take an action. So what I would do here, simply as a candidate, I will tell him, after I've given you some consideration, I will tell him, I have a very rich experience, a very long experience, and it's very difficult for me to, summarize that in, in a 35 or 40 minutes interview. And that's why I will invite you, to, pick some points, either from my CV or from what I've just said here, which you want us to discuss further. Okay? So now you are giving the hand back to your interlocutor, and it shows a lot of respect. When you came into the room, they introduced themselves, they now told you, okay, introduce yourself. So that they're inviting you to take some action. So respect also implies that once you're finished doing what you've done, invite them to take another action. Once you don't do that, you are creating tension, you are creating a suspense, you're breaking the flow. Okay? Very important. So at this point in time, let me just take an example that my potential employer asks me, okay, well, very interesting what you've said, Mr. Example, okay? But you said you just had 2 years. When you finish university, you got this job for 2 years. But normally, when people come out from university with no experience, they will spend at least 4 years, on a job before changing. You change after 2 years. How are we sure that, we can count on you? Why did you change after 2 years? So at this point, we start back again. Attention, consideration, action. Attention, consideration, action. So what I will do here, I will need logical arguments. And logical arguments are based on facts, on figures. And even if at this point I don't have real figures, I have to put figures out. Because figures is simply what makes, captivates the attention of your interlocutor. So what I will tell him that is that 75% of new professionals change their job after 1 or 1.5 years. 75% of new professionals change their job after 1 or 1.5 years. Full stop. Attention. Because at this point he's asking himself, what is this guy saying? Where are all these figures coming from? Oh, I didn't know this. Is that really true? Maybe I will check that after some point in time. But he has your attention. So at this point now, you can open here. Very important. If you've understood this, you are capable to sell any product you want. You're capable to get any job you want. You're capable to, convince any partner you have, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's a business partner. Very, very important. Consideration is the key. Okay? Well, I hope you've understood the video. You like the video. Please comment, like, and share. And I give you a rendezvous in my next video. Ciao.